Breaking news: the man who burnt the Koran in Sweden had rotten feet in addition to leprosy on his hands. Alhamdulillah. Sweden allowed the reburning of the Koran. The situation is unlikely to help Sweden's attempt to tackle NATO's Turkish aggression. Meanwhile, Morocco withdrew its Chinese ambassador in protest. Two men standing in front of the Central Mosque of Stockholm on Wednesday burned a copy of the Koran to coincide with the beginning of the Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha, after the Swedish court approved it. Swedish public broadcaster SVT said that the 37-year-old Iraqi refugee who applied for a work permit, who requested a banned book, took pages from the Koran, leaned against his shoes and put them inside a shoe. To explain. About 200 people gathered to watch, including protesters. A person who tried to throw a stone was arrested. The court is on Wednesday. Protests, even those that might be seen as a form of protest in other countries, are rarely prohibited in Sweden. The burning of Islamic books took place on Eid al-Adha, the holiest day of the year for Muslims. Burning the book could further jeopardize Swedish efforts to defeat Turkish opposition to NATO membership. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan responded to the Koran crisis by saying that Sweden should not join the group. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan condemned the action with his tweet. What do the Swedish authorities say? The court stated that there should be a clear link between security concerns and collective planning. According to the Swedish television channel TV4, police believe this is not the case. The court said, in the opinion of the authorities, the dangerous security situation and its consequences did not justify the decision to vehemently reject the request of the General Assembly to be held in accordance with the current law in connection with the burning of the Koran. This is why the authorities allow you to file a petition, he added. Morocco withdraws its ambassador. Morocco, in response to the situation, withdrew its Swedish ambassador indefinitely on Wednesday. The Moroccan Foreign Ministry also called Sweden's interim minister in Rabat and announced that the country strongly condemns the attack and refuses to recognize it. Book burning in Sweden. The burning of the Koran has become the focus of foreigners in Sweden, such as Danish-Swedish political leader Rasmus Paludan. But Paludan is not behind Wednesday's work. While protests or book burnings are rarely banned in Sweden, anti-NATO plans, including the burning of the Koran, were banned by Swedish police in February. The far right had previously burned a copy of the Koran in front of a Turkish airport. This led Turkey to cancel the Swedish defense minister's visit to Ankara, and President Erdogan said Sweden could not count on Turkey's support. Swedish Prime Minister still wants to join NATO. Despite Turkey's constant attacks and the reburning of the Koran, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson says Sweden can join NATO. He told SVT in an interview that Sweden will become a NATO member, but acknowledged that it would not happen when NATO held its next big meeting in Vilnius. We also said that we respect Turkey's decision and are happy to have another meeting now. Perhaps we can resolve this awkward question by discussing it before the Vilnius meeting, Kristersson said on how Sweden would influence NATO's vision. Said. Correct but not necessary, he added. An Iranian protester holds the Koran, the holy book of Islam, during a protest against Sweden's burning of the Koran in front of the Swedish embassy in Tehran, Iran. Iraqi Shiite cleric and political leader Muqtada al-Sadr's hundreds of followers stood in front of the Swedish embassy in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, against Sweden's burning of the Koran with the words, "immediately removed from the Swedish ambassador," on the wall. Security forces withdrew from the Swedish embassy after protesters held pictures of Sadr and the flag of the Iraqi security force Mahdi army. In this photo provided by the Iraqi news agency, followers of Iraqi Shiite cleric and political leader Muqtada al-Sadr stormed the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, Iraq, against Sweden's burning of the Koran. The supporters of the Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr held a demonstration in front of the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, holding the holy book of Muslims, the Koran, in response to the burning of the Koran in Baghdad, Iraq. A priest shouting slogans in front of the Swedish embassy in Tehran, Iran, protested the burning of the Koran in Sweden. The poster on the back reads, "Muslim students are supporters of religion and the Koran," in Persian. Iranian protesters chanted slogans against Sweden's burning of the Holy Koran in front of the Swedish embassy in Tehran, Iran. The supporters of the Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr held a demonstration in front of the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, holding the holy book of Muslims, the Koran, in response to the burning of the Koran in Baghdad, Iraq. Supporters of Shiite Muslim leader Muqtada al-Sadr demonstrated in front of the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, burning rainbow flags in response to the burning of the Koran by Sweden and Baghdad, Iraq. The supporters of the Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr held a demonstration in front of the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, holding the holy book of Muslims, the Koran, in response to the burning of the Koran in Baghdad, Iraq. The Swedish president denounced the burning of the Koran in Stockholm as very disrespectful, leading to tensions with Turkey as the Scandinavian country took Ankara to court over NATO membership. Far-right politician Rasmus Paludan set fire to the holy book of Muslims in front of a Turkish club in a city in Sweden on Saturday. Angry that the Swedish authorities allowed Paludan to protest, Ankara cancelled the visit of the Swedish defense minister and called the ambassador in Stockholm. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson tweeted on Saturday night, "Freedom of speech is the essence of freedom. But laws are not needed. For many books, burning is sacred, a terrible act. My condolences to all Muslims who are saddened by what happened in Stockholm today." While Stockholm tried to persuade NATO member Turkey, Sweden and Finland to participate in the stalled tender, the attack in Paludan further strained relations. It is disappointing that the authorities have allowed him to sit in the presence of law and order in Sweden. It was also condemned by Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as by the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Jakarta stated that hatred of scriptures harms faith and is permanent, adding that freedom of expression must be used responsibly. Dozens of protesters gathered in front of the Swedish consulate in Istanbul on Saturday night, burned the Swedish flag, and called for Turkey to break diplomatic relations with Stockholm. Listen to new songs exclusively on geosavn.com. Paludan is a Swedish-Danish activist convicted of racial discrimination. Koran.